and there will be evidence led on the auditing process by members of the DRD later in the hearing.
So it is correct to say that the project is subjected to annual auditing until it is closed?
Mr. Chair, I'm not quite sure what the frequencies are, but they are audited, and I think the representatives from the department will have to confirm what the periods or intervals are between auditing phases.
Right. Thank you, Colonel. Now, I'd like to take you back to page 2 of Bundle I, the bundle that we are using. Page 2 is where your statement commences. You have indicated in paragraph 4 of the statement that your statement and your evidence should be considered jointly with some extracts of the JIT report. Now, I'd like to focus your attention now to the JIT report, and I will refer you to specific clauses or paragraphs of the JIT report which relate to yourself or the project that you were leading. This information, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Musi, is contained in pages in a document that is annexed or added to Bundle I, and that is pages 126 to 160. There are just a few clauses that I would like to place on record. The first page that I would like to refer the Commission to, Bundle I, pages 126 to 160. The page that I'd like to refer you, Chair, is page 128. And it is under clause 5.2, and in particular I'd like to read into the record clause 5.2.1.1. May I proceed? Thank you. Colonel, in terms of clause 5.2.1.1 of the JIT report, it is indicated that Lieutenant Colonel FKS Filyun compiled the operational requirement number 3 of 95, and it was date stamped the first day of 1995 by the Chief of the Air Force. Do you confirm that the Lieutenant Colonel FKS Filyun that is referred to therein is yourself?
That is correct, Chair.
And do you also confirm that at the time you were actually described or referred to as the user specialist in respect of the Alouette replacement program?
Mr. Chair, that is partially correct. The correct terminology is the user specialist officer.
Thank you, Colonel. Mr. Chair, I would now like to turn to page 129 of the bundle. In particular, I would like to draw your attention to paragraphs 5.2.2 as well as 5.3.1. May I proceed, Chair? Thank you. Now, in terms of clause 5.2.2.1, the staff target 3 of 95 for Project Flange that addressed the replacement of the Alouette 3 was compiled by Major General Lombard. Is that correct, sir?
Mr. Chair, that is incorrect. I, at the stage, as a Lieutenant Colonel, compiled that document. It was, however, signed by Major General Lombard.
Right, thank you. Still on the same page, I'd like to focus your attention to clause 5.3.1.1 that deals with staff requirement 3 of 95. And it reads as follows. It appears from the various versions of the staff requirement that it was originally compiled by Major General W.H. Hechter in January 1999. Now, would it be correct to say the various versions of the staff requirement were compiled by this Major General?
Mr. Chair, that is once again incorrect. I, as a Lieutenant Colonel, compiled that document, and it possibly was signed by Major General Hechter.
Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to focus your attention to page 131 of the bundle and refer you particularly to paragraph 5.3.2.1, which deals with the user requirement statement. Page 131, Chair. And the paragraph is 5.3.2.1 under user requirement statement. Sir, that paragraph reads, the project officer compiled the URS in March 2000 for the Director of the Air Force Acquisition. The URS was recommended and approved on 20th March 2000. Now, what I'd like to ascertain from your good self is as to whether reference to the project officer, is it reference to yourself, or is it reference to a project officer in another sphere of this acquisition?
Mr. Chair, the project officer that they are referring to in that paragraph was myself, Lieutenant Colonel Viljoen. However, for absolute correctness, what we should minute is that version 5 of the URS was approved in March 2000. There were various iterations of this document preceding this, with minor changes until the final approval in March 2000.
Right, thank you. Now I'd like to then move to page 135 of the bundle and focus your attention, Chair, to paragraph 5.3.5.1. 5.3.5.1, it falls under the heading Project Study Report. Page 135. Right. The paragraph reads, the program manager of the LUH team, Mr. Odendal, compiled the project study report dated the 9th day of September 1999 that described the equipment/source selection process followed for Project Flange. This report was approved and authorized. Now, I'd like to ascertain from yourself as to whether the program manager was in fact Mr. Odendal at this point relating to the project study, and if so, at what level or in relation to which institution was the acquisition being processed?
Mr. Chair, this phase of the program was managed by Armscor in conjunction with the project officer, the Armscor program manager, and the Air Force project officer, who formed part of the joint team. So I think for clarity, to insert after the, to make it read the Armscor program manager, would avoid further uncertainty. And it was Mr. Odendal, as the Armscor program manager, that compiled the document.
Thank you, sir. I would like to get some further clarity, just especially for the purpose of the commission, with regard to the studies referred to, especially in relation to the project or the concept of replacement of armament. In terms of the JIT report, the study concerned in respect of paragraph 5.3.5 is referred to as the project study report. Now, earlier in your evidence, when we were talking about the commencement of the replacement of the Alouette 3, you alluded to the fact that there is a study that was undertaken, and you were the specialist user officer who was actually heading that study that was undertaken. How would you describe that study? I'd like to get the distinction clear on record between the study that you undertook preceding the development of the ROC as against the study that was undertaken within the Armscor sphere.
Mr. Chair, if we refer to Bundle I, page 93, just below the heading of the document referenced on page 93, there is reference A, which reads, the Alouette 3 upgrade feasibility study dated 6 September 1993 is the source document or the document where the information was contained on the feasibility to upgrade or not upgrade the Alouette 3.
So that study would have been described as a feasibility study, because by then the project had not as yet been established. The project was only established after the staff target had been approved.
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Right. Thank you, Chair. That concludes reference to this particular document, the JIT report. Now, I'd like to draw your attention, sir, to Bundle K. Mr. Chair and Commissioner Musi, what we have done, as I indicated earlier on, has been to just get the relevant extracts of Bundle K. So it actually now, the pages that we would like to refer to do form part of the bundle that we are presently using, Bundle I, and the extracts appear on pages 161 to 165. I beg your pardon for causing some confusion by referring to Bundle K. Sir, do you have Bundle K do you have pages 161 to 165 before you? Yes. Now, I would like you to refer to page 162 of the bundle, or rather, I beg your pardon, page 163 in particular of the bundle. Page 163, if you look at slide number 6, it does show the comparatives between the Alouette 3 that was phased out and then replaced by the A109 LUH. Can you please just talk us through that information so that the Commission can have a better understanding as regards whether there was some benefit or improvement that the country enjoyed as a result of this replacement and acquisition?
Mr. Chair, this document was presented by my director a few days ago, so I'll fleetingly go through it to compare the Alouette 3 with the A109 LUH. The max all-up weight of the Alouette 3 was 2,100 kilograms, as opposed to the LUH, which is 3,175 kilograms. So that gives you just over 1,000 kilogram improvement. The range, the standard range on the Alouette was 278 kilometers, as opposed to the LUH, 427 kilometers, almost double. The Alouette didn't have the capability of auxiliary tanks. The A109 has standard tanks and 3 optional auxiliary tanks. Hence the improvement from 427 kilometers to 719 kilometers with the extended fuel for the LUH, as opposed to the Alouette remaining at 278 kilometers. The size of the airframe is similar. As you can see, the Alouette has 2 crew and 5 passengers, as opposed to the LUH, which has 2 crew and 6 passengers. The maximum cruise speed of the Alouette was 155 kilometers, as opposed to the LUH at 285 kilometers. substantial improvement, and if you compare that to the speed, the fuel, the endurance, it's a far superior machine. As I mentioned earlier, one of the shortfalls in the Alouette was that it only had a single engine and was limited in its utilization at night and in bad weather, and that was overcome with a twin engine pack in the LUH as opposed to a single engine in the Alouette. Technology moved from dials, conventional dials in the Alouette, to a fully integrated digital cockpit in the LUH. The Alouette was not capable or very limited, or had a very limited capability in night vision goggle operations, whereas the LUH has a full night vision capability. The Alouette was only cleared for flying in visual flight rules, which speaks for itself, clear weather. Ooh, my apologies, Mr. Chair, I thought I'd switched it off. To close, as I mentioned, the Alouette was only capable of flying in visual flight rules, which is good weather conditions by day and no less than half moon at night, or in the vicinity of a built-up area where you have the reference of the lights of the urban area, as opposed to the light utility helicopter, which is fully instrument flight rule cleared, which means it can fly in cloud in no icing conditions. It can fly in a dark moon condition and can do an automated instrument letdown down to very, very low altitudes. So if we look at the comparison between the two, there's a substantial improvement, but I think one should be reluctant to knock the Alouette. The Alouette rendered tremendous service during its life in the Air Force, and it was just technology that overtook it, unfortunately. Thank you, Mr. Chair.